no doubt about that. But even if I was absolutely squeaky clean, if someone came to me and says, you know, Dave, we think you murdered someone in Port Elizabeth, and I've never been to Port Elizabeth, never heard of the person, I wouldn't rush into court to clean myself. I certainly wouldn't on my day in court, because you actually don't know. And that's an issue of transformation. Even the Scorpions situation. I mean, I've observed that very closely because I'm very involved in that. I fight very hard with the Scorpions. I've got some issues I'm going to discuss just now with the Scorpions. But throughout that process with the Scorpions, one thing has become clear to me. I think that the idea of having an investigating unit working with the prosecutors, while again it's a step away from the Constitution in terms of the pure principles of the Constitution, but I can see how it would work. And I can see why one might make an exception in the interests of combating organized crime, etc., etc. But the problem again has to be, you've got to have the right people running it. Because when you start to move away from a constitution, you actually can't have the wrong people. It can't be a transformation process. And I think that to some extent is perhaps why the Scorpions get into some difficulty, because the Scorpions did allow themselves to be used in certain cases by other state entities. They allow themselves to be used by other state entities. I'll give you an example of that because it's in the material I'd like to speak to you about. If I look at the role of the criminal charges as they relate to me, what has happened in my case is that when I was initially approached by SARS, they came on the basis that there was various newspaper reports that says Dave King's made all of this kind of money, and they started to engage me. And there's a lot of the material supporting this is in the handouts you're going to get then with the letters I've exchanged with the Commissioner. When they sent me the first letter saying, we see you've made X amount of money, where do you get the money from, etc., etc., I started engaging them by letters, and I've given you copies of the correspondence and what I'm going to give you. So again, quite contrary to what SARS have said, from the very, very first time they raised this issue with me, I sent them letters saying, guys, I'd like to get together with you. I'd like to explain the situation of the trust with you. I'd like to explain where the money came from, because it's one thing for a newspaper report to say, Dave King bought a wine farm or Dave King bought an aeroplane. I mean, I read that stuff. There's a lot of people, have you seen Johann Rupert's new winery? It's fantastic. It's not Johann Rupert's new winery. It's Lon Moran's new winery. It's Lamotte's new winery. But people talk in terms of individuals. And that's just the way things are. So I really said to SARS, let's get together and we'll talk about the various corporate structures. And I will take you through my corporate structures. Now, you will see from the handouts that I'm giving you that SARS consistently refused to meet with me. They refused to meet with me. I had a right to get before SARS. I had a right to give them an explanation. Because I realized already, I'm now going back to 1999, 2000, when it started hitting the press, it was clear to me this wasn't going to go away. And SARS were told this guy's worth billions, he's made all this money. It wasn't something I could just sweep under the tree. So my immediate response to SARS was, I've got to get in front of you. And I've given you copies of the documentation where you will see that I repeatedly made attempts to get before SARS. And I said to SARS, Mr. Chips, who was investigating me at the time, I said, Mr. Chips, this is a complicated thing. You can't just send me a letter saying, where did you get the money? What money? I'm saying it's not my money. It's corporate structures. They refused to meet with me. And this exchange of correspondence, you'll see from the handout I'm giving you, went on for probably a year and a bit. And then eventually, at the end of a year and a bit, SARS sent me a letter saying, we're thinking differently about it. We do agree that we should actually have a one-on-one engagement to try and understand your tax affairs. But I'll tell you how we want to go about it. We want to go about it on the basis that we want you to come before a Section 74C inquiry, which is a very formal inquiry, and we want you to give your evidence under oath. And, by the way, who we'd like to be the presiding officer is a chap called Advocate Pete Murray, and it's quoted in the documents I'll give you, while Advocate Murray does on occasion work for the Commissioner, more often than not he works against the Commissioner. So I thought, okay, that sounds fair. It's been a year and a bit, we've not really made any progress. I said, I have given you copies of this. We've not made any progress. I'll actually take the chance now. I'll go and meet them. I'll go to the Section 74C inquiry, and I will give them everything that they want. I then, for the first time, engaged a legal team, because I thought, well, I'm doing everything on my own up until that point in time. I got a legal team, and we scheduled the Section 74C inquiry for the end of January 2002. I went along to the inquiry. It was scheduled to run for 3 days. When I arrived there the first day, the 28th of January, I'd done all the preparations with my legal team. I was taking all my documentation along with me. And my legal team advised me at the very beginning that SARS had withheld certain documents that I was entitled to have access to prior to giving evidence in the 74C inquiry. And because they were withholding the documents, I had the right to postpone giving evidence in the inquiry to another date while they resolved the right under the Freedom of Information Act, whatever, to try and access the documents. I, in fact, decided no. I said, look, I'm here, I'm ready, I've been waiting a year and a bit for this, and this is all documented. It's not just me giving you a version, it's documented. I said, let's go ahead with the inquiry. And I decided to go ahead, subject to them in time fighting the right for access to documents. I said, let's fight that fight. Let's try and get the documents if we think we should have the documents. But in the meantime, let's get the show on the road. I'm here, I'm ready, I'm prepared, I want to do this stuff. So we said, let's go ahead. The procedure for going ahead was a fairly simple one that we agreed. We said to SARS, let you go first. You ask King anything you want for information, get documents from him. You do whatever you want. And when you've completed your inquiry and your questioning of me, then we will take over. And we will now, not cross-examine, but cross-question. And we will make sure that we'll say, well, Dave, did you really mean that? Or if you feel things have not been covered. So really, that was the way we said, let them go first, and my legal team will go second. And we felt that was the right way to get a fair and balanced exchange of information. And that was agreed to. I then gave evidence for 2.5 days out of 3 days. And after lunchtime on the third day, we really hadn't achieved very much. Most of the issues that had come up in my tax assessments we hadn't even covered yet. And SARS said, look, we've got enough at this stage. We don't want to go any further. Let's postpone the inquiry. Let's postpone the inquiry. And we'll come back again in May. Meanwhile, give us some further information, etc., and we'll continue on that basis. I was a bit disappointed at the time because I thought we could have done more in the 3 days, but anyway, it was a postponement, and at least we'd come back and do some more later on. But what happened next, and this is where the real game starts to begin, is that SARS had predetermined. The 74C inquiry was never a legitimate inquiry. That was just a way of getting me to go on record with certain things that SARS wanted to take and use to go before the court on an ex parte basis for an application they already had prepared and tax assessments they already had virtually prepared to go before the court and have a basis for seizing all of my South African assets. And that's exactly what happened. So I was kind of blissfully unaware of this. We kind of thought we'd done what SARS wanted for 2.5 days. We were quite happy, subject to the frustration about the delay. And in the interim period, all of a sudden I was served with this freezing order. They raised assessments. They kept the assessment secret from me.